Everybody, good evening. It is Tuesday, August 15th, 2023, and we've just concluded an executive session pursuant to conversation about property purchase, acquisition, or leasing, and prospective or pending litigation. And now we have two other sessions to move into. We have a special called session, and then we'll have our regularly scheduled agenda setting session tonight. And for the purpose of our special called session, I'm going to go ahead and ask Clerk Spratland to call the roll for us. Here.
Lane. Here. Tyler.
Here.
Wright.
Present.
Fisher.
Here.
Rule.
Here.
Culpepper.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Thornton.
Here.
Hamby.
Here. All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate it. All right, all of the public input tonight will take place under effectively the same contours. Public input at several opportunities will be a 3-minute per individual opportunity. You will have 3 minutes, and you're going to see the green light in front of Clerk Spratland when you begin speaking. When you have 30 seconds remaining, that light is going to turn yellow, and at the conclusion of your 3 minutes, it is going to turn red. I'm going to thank you for your time and ask you to enjoy the rest of the evening. So we have old and new business tonight. 3 items on the agenda. One, the third, is going to be asked to be held because the lawyers are still doing some work. But now is the time when any member of the public who would like to speak to either items 1, 2, or 3 can join us at the podium. And so I'd ask you to step on up and let us know which item you're speaking to, and your 3 minutes will then begin. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. My name is Paul Kramer, and I reside at 431 Greystone Terrace. I wanted to take just a minute and address you tonight. First, to say that we do have the developer back under contract. It was not an easy effort. It took a great deal of time to sit back down at the table and truly understand what the dynamics were that sort of pulled us apart to begin with. I am super proud of this developer, that they were able to be very transparent and share with us the challenges that they had in front of them, which are big. This parking deck is a giant asset, and it is the key that unlocks the rest of the development that happens around. It not only will bring in $350 million worth of new development, but it will also help our tax allocation district and help our entire community in that area in a way that I can't think of any other project doing. I know that there's been some talk about delay, an opportunity to kick the can down the road, and I want to address that kind of straight on. If we were to delay this vote in moving forward tonight, a number of things would happen. The contract that we worked so hard to bring the developer back under contract would not be, it would be null and void. We would have to start all over again. There were 2 major things that really made that deal come back together. One of those was that it was our ability to pay for the bridge and stair. And being able to get the bond through is exactly what would give us the funds to be able to pay for that bridge and stair. Without the bridge and stair, we're going to have a beautiful arena, but no way to exit that facility. And I think it's a major mistake. And the time that it will take to get the plans from the developer, have J.E. Dunn price those plans, adequately go out to bid, get the steel, have it transported in, and then have 10 months to build that when we have an arena that's going to be finished in 12 months, it would be a grave error at this point to do that. But it isn't just the bridge and stair. It's all of the other pieces, parts, that are vital to making this development really become successful. So I would beg of you tonight to thank our developer for having the courage to come back in, to realize that we have 3 other people, 3 other partners in Pacquiolin and Levy and the Oakview Group, all who have put their dollars forward to the tune of about $11 million. All of them expect an arena that can perform. They expect an arena to open on time if we are to be successful going forward. Final thing is, we are booking that facility right now, and I don't think you want to send the wrong message. to the
Appreciate it.
people that'll rent it out.
Is there
Thank
anyone
you.
else here to speak to old or new business tonight? Good evening.
Evening. I'm Michael McClendon. I live in Princeton Mill off of South Lumpkin. I just wanted to briefly address two things. One is I don't like being part of a stampede or feeling like I'm under the hoof prints of a stampede. As you know, many people have asked questions about the Classic Center proposal and refinancing. We have yet to see a detailed cost estimate, a detailed schedule, an integrated schedule that shows all the transportation work that has to be done, that the city manager has alluded to that has to be done. We've not seen any kind of risk assessment associated with it. But yet what we do know is that the cost of this to the taxpayers seems to continue to grow. And I would just urge you before you vote to consider the fact of what we don't know yet and take that in consideration. And as I said, as a taxpayer, I don't like to be stampeded on. We really need to know what we're getting into before you vote. The second thing I want to briefly just speak on is the mall. You know, the Mall Redevelopment Committee continually cancels all its meetings. But yet tonight, you're being presented some agreements to be signed that have to do with the mall redevelopment. How can you do that when the Mall Redevelopment Committee meetings have all been canceled? And those agreements haven't been reviewed. They're not on the website. Citizens have not had an opportunity to review those agreements or provide comments back into their commissioner or either into City Hall. So I'd also ask you to consider that tonight before you also kind of get stampeded again into agreeing to something that we really haven't had time to review. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to old or new business this evening?
John Stam, 151 East Broad, Athens. I am one of the development principals with Mallory and Evans for the project with the Classic Center. First, to address something that Paul said, it doesn't take us any courage to come back to the table here. We love Athens, done quite a bit in downtown, and couldn't be more excited to have the opportunity to do something that we think it will be truly transformative for downtown. We've spent the better part of a year committed to this project and working on it. You could not be trying to effectuate something along these lines in more difficult times than we have right now. It's been a roller coaster, no question about it. Emotions have been involved. We've stuck through it, and we've worked long and hard to get back to a point where we're comfortable moving forward. We're absolutely committed to moving forward with this project. I think further delays certainly makes things extremely problematic. Despite some of the downturns and some of the twists and turns, we've continued to work and spend money and continue to draw because we know how important the parking deck is for downtown. When we started the project, the parking deck was not part of our original RFP. Circumstances and time allowed the opportunity for the parking deck to be part of the project. Paul's absolutely correct. The parking deck is the key that unlocks the rest of the entire project. I think we have a great project. I've shared some of the renderings with some of you all. But, all I can say is we're committed to moving forward as soon and as expeditiously as possible. Our hope is that there will not be any further delays. I think it does put some elements of things at risk, but hopefully we'll work through it and look forward to working with you all on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak to old or new business on the special called session? All right, seeing none, we'll come for commission discussion. Certainly, any commissioner has the opportunity to lay a motion on the table at this point. Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight, and appreciate everybody's comment. Just want to talk a little bit about the Classic Center Arena. I think, the citizens of this community voted several years ago to commit $34 million moving forward, knowing that this was going to be enough and was going to have to use private monies to get this thing going. And I think it would be a travesty if we did not move forward to try to get this arena done. I think it's vital for what's been going on. And, we stuck between a rock and a hard place. If we don't do anything and we say, okay, we're not going to do anything else with the mall arena, we got a sore spot. The flip side of that is, if we finish the project, we got a project that we can be proud of, we bring in events, and our colleagues, we've been talking back and forth, and I don't think we need to kick this can down the road. I mean, is 2 weeks really going to make a difference? And my question is, are we punishing the developer who we asked to get back to the table, which he's back at the table? So the question we should all ask ourselves, why are we punishing the developer? Because the main deal is we got to worry about this third bond that we got to vote on. So we shouldn't be punishing the developer who has agreed, in principle, to move forward. So what is 2 weeks delay gonna do to that? So I don't think we need to kick the can down the road. I think we need to go ahead and take a vote on it. Let's move forward. Let's just get this thing done, because we keep waiting and keep pushing it. It's just and I understand the finance. I mean, the costs have gone up. Who would have thought that materials and and all these other things, construction costs have gone up. I mean, there's something that we didn't realize. But I can just tell us, from my perspective, is I don't want us to punish the developer based on getting them back to the table, waiting another 2 weeks to get this done. So I think we just need to move forward and vote for whatever we're going to vote on.
Would you like to make that in the form of a motion?
I'm just making comments right now.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Commissioner Houle?
I'll make a motion to approve option 1A through G with the associated attachments.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Houle. Do I
And
hear
I'll
a
sec-
second?
I'll second that.
All right, got a motion from Commissioner Houle. I've got a second from Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Houle, any comments as follow-up?
I feel like Commissioner Fisher covered a lot of it. I'm one of the people on this body who I think was really skeptical of this project. I think spoke against it being on the SPLOST list. But now that it's here, we are deep in. We are sunk in. It's not a sunk cost fallacy. We are invested in this. So we've got to see it through. And I'm pretty convinced that delay here is detrimental to our ability to make good on the existing bonds we've already taken out, which are even larger than these. And I think that we've got some good stuff in here, which is thanks to a lot of hard work by Classic Center staff and board, ACC staff and board, especially our attorney's office. I'm really glad to see the living wages codified in the updated intergovernmental agreement, among many other things in here. I'm glad that the developers are back to the table, and I appreciate my colleagues' urgings in past meetings that I think helped get us to this point. But I agree that I'm pretty convinced we need to move forward on this to get this done on time. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner. Other input? Commissioner Hamby?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't disagree that we are deep in this, but that doesn't mean we abdicate our responsibility in what we, as a body, should be looking for. It wasn't a month ago that the request for the third bond was at $13 million, and now it's at $25 million. With an additional $12 million coming. The reason why we were at that work session and asking for the developer come back, because we knew the developer was putting $12 million into the project. It seems like they still are, so the project has grown from $25 million to $37 million with the developer contribution. I think 2 weeks for me, Commissioner Fisher, I think would allow us to go and look at and figure out the sources of revenue for each of the bonds. And when you start looking into it, there's parking that's paying back for the revenue of the second bond. There's parking that's paying back for the revenue of the third bond. So I'm just trying to grasp my thinking around the sources of revenue that are going to pay back each bond, because the numbers have shifted. The numbers have shifted quite a bit. And that's something I think we need to be transparent about and understand as a body. I'm a big supporter of the Classic Center. They've done a tremendous amount of good for this community, tremendous amount of good for a lot of people in this community. But I do think we owe it to the community to make sure that, this project has gone up to $151 million. There's an additional there would be additional $100 million in interest payments. That's $250 million for this project. I think it's going to pay off for our community in the long run. but we're going to be paying for it in the long run, 40 years out, and well beyond the days we'll be here. So we need to make sure we're leaving it in good stead and making sure that those revenue sources that have been projected are good, the numbers are sound, and that we're doing our due diligence. So I am going to make a motion to hold it for 2 weeks so that we can have, perhaps Manager Williams can get us a chart of all the different revenue sources paying for each of the bonds. Perhaps we can understand more about the additional $12 million and such as that. I mean, that was the whole point of getting the contractor back in. That was the point, not to leave $12 million on the table, but not to add an additional $12 million in the process. So that's my motion on the floor to hold it for 2 weeks.
So
And I'm
that's
going to second it.
Substitute motion to hold for 2 weeks. Second from Commissioner Thornton. Commissioner Thornton, any follow-up?
No, I have been meeting and talking to several of the other commissioners, and this is not my strongest area of expertise, but I would like to have a better understanding of how this impacts our constituents down the road. I just need a better understanding. Hopefully, the developer will be patient with us. I know my constituents would not like me voting blindly just because I've always supported the arena. I've always supported Paul Kramer and his work. I think they are a staple in this community, and I want to be able to explain exactly what I voted for and why.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Davenport.
Yes. Well, Commissioner Link was before me, I'm sorry. Ladies first.
Go ahead, Commissioner Link.
I'll agree that the horse has pretty much left the barn on this project, and we need to see it through. And I was skeptical from the beginning, and there are some things missing from the history on the agenda item. The citizen committee, the SPLOST citizen committee, was skeptical too. They did not recommend this project. We forced it upon them. I think I was one of maybe only 2 commissioners that did not vote to force it upon them. But as it's moved forward, I recognize we have a TAD associated with this project, and there is a great opportunity to use those TAD funds to benefit the greater community, specifically the community of East Athens. But we also see some of those TAD funds funneling back into pay for the arena. When the citizens of Athens voted for this project, they were voting for an arena. I don't think the public understands all the massive, massive projects that are associated with the arena that are being used to pay for the arena. We're going to see condos and the parking deck, and it really is a transformative project. And I think the public needs to be crystal clear on that. And we just got this documentation on Friday. Some of us have not had the opportunity to fully read through it. I'm certain the public has not had the opportunity to fully read through it. I feel like in discussing this here in this public meeting, it can possibly spur the public to take a good look at it, and we can actually cast a vote on it in a couple weeks and get a clearer understanding of the full implications of this new financing, where exactly the money's coming from and going to. And I'm delighted that the developer is committed. They are committed to following through with this project and seeing to it that the arena and all the adjacent properties get built out. But I think we just do need to catch our breath and fully digest it and allow the public to fully digest it, and possibly institute some additional oversight mechanisms to assure that moving forward, everything is crystal clear and we're fully aware of any additional needs that pop up, and where this contingency money is going to, and assure that there is clear communication with the developer and with this body and with the Classic Center Authority. So I'm going to support the motion to delay just a couple weeks so we can fully digest everything.
Commissioner Davenport.
Yes, thank you. So not only do we have to answer to the developer, we have to mainly answer to our constituents. And I've gotten a lot of phone calls and emails about the ballooning cost of this project. I support I support Paul the Classic Center, but I'm 100% conflicted because on the facts and issues number 10, if we do not act tonight, we could see even more ballooning costs down the road. And and I drove by, well, I have to drive by now since part of East Broad is shut down, but there's a structure there. I mean, it's pretty much halfway done or close to near being done. And that's going to be a bigger tragedy for our community than to have an empty, unbuilt piece of property because we failed to act appropriately, or we have to spend $10 to $20 million more over what is already over budgeted for a project to get it completed. So I look forward to hearing my colleagues' responses.
Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I did have the opportunity to read through this pretty carefully, and it is complex. But I do pass by that arena a lot on my way into town, and it's getting very big. And the months pass by very quickly. It's not too long before that's supposed to be opening up, and we need that revenue coming in to pay off those first bonds and second bonds. I did want to ask the manager a couple of questions here to clarify for us, because originally we had the idea that we were going to have half of this from the developer and half from a bond, and now we're basically going to the full thing from the bond right up front. I realize, so the developer will be adding money in there. Why not go back to the original thing where we're like, oh, let's do 14 million on the bond and take the stuff from the developer? So I'd like you to address that question. The other question is on the contingency. I know that in here, you know, my thing is, okay, it's getting very built, but it's not completely built. And how much more is there going to be coming down the line? I noticed there's a little over 3 million in here in this new estimate for the designed contingency. Will that still be in there for any I mean, that's covering any new costs. So there's $3 million in here for costs that aren't anticipated at this time. Is that correct? Yes. And could you just address that question about the bond, the change in the bond, and why can't we go back to the original bond idea?
Sure. Well, and Mayor, you might consider allowing Mr. Kramer to talk, to fill in any gaps I might have. But basically, you know, there is no original deal. And that's because the interest rate environment has changed considerably since the developers first contemplated this. And they continue to try to make the numbers work in the face of that increasing interest rates, which, you know, kind of took time over time. And so they, and I don't want to misspeak because I haven't been in all the meetings, but they basically, you know, told the Classic Center, we're going to have to relook at this because it's not the same, the costs are, you know, it's not viable in its current form. So the notion that we can go back to the original deal, that, unless the developer would agree to that tonight, that's not, that whole evolution is what's got us to where we are now. So there are the other thing, I guess, in all of this is the developer can make these commitments, but until they close on their financing, there's an uncertainty there. And I believe what the Classic Center Authority is proposing is, look, these are all the funds we need to finish this project, whether or not the developer is able to close or not. And there are a lot of time-sensitive lead times that have to get done. You know, this bridge and stair is probably the biggest urgent issue out there in that, you know, in the original deal, the developer was going to take on those costs. That was everybody's understanding. In fact, they spent considerable funds in creating the design. So they paid an architect to design the bridge and stair with the thought that they were going to build it. Interest rate environment changed those plans. They came back to the table. And so when this is approved, then we'll get the design, then we can get it priced, and then there's a change order involved, which these monies can, you know, cover. So it's different than it was before. So, yeah.
Do you want to follow up from?
Yeah, just on
Paul
that too,
Kramer?
and I would, Paul, if there is anything else to go on that, I'd appreciate it. But I did look over the different variations for paying back for this third bond. And there's that wonderful contract that our attorney's office was looking through as well. I'm assuming there's someone else matching up the payback on the different bonds to make sure that they're all different revenue streams.
And if I might, because, there's been a lot of conversation about this. So one clarification that I think we ought to make is that, and this is how I rationalize the extra ask that the Classic Center Authority has voted for, is recommending to you, is that, at this point, the government's role in this financing is basically the cosigner. We're the backer in case those funds can't get paid. So the taxpayer dollars aren't going into it now other than the $34 million of SPLOST. That's something that a couple of folks that asked me questions didn't understand. They go, oh, I thought y'all were pumping money into the deal. So there's a cosigner aspect of this. Now, if those revenues don't materialize in some form or fashion, then the government's on the hook for that. But what's happened is the Classic Center Board has voted to put their own revenues as a stopgap in case the developer isn't able to close or isn't able to move forward. And that's why they're proposing the full 25 to say, look, we'll get everything financed, we'll be done. If the developer doesn't work out, we can backfill that with our revenues until such time, because in the development world, you create value on a piece of property, and then more value is created by the existence of that. And that's the basic premise behind the arena. It's going to make all the property around there more valuable. So for whatever reason, the developer's not able to be successful here, the arena's complete, then they can market it to other developers in the ensuing years.
Commissioner Myers, did you get everything you wanted, or do you want some follow-up from
Is there
Classic
any
Center?
other follow-up on that too, that Paul
Paul?
can provide, or is that covered?
Thank you. I think that's a really important point that you brought up. And Manager, I think you did a good job of articulating that. The reason we're asking for the entirety of the bond, you can have a house under contract, but that deal is not done until the loan goes through and it's completely done. So while the developer fully intends to move forward with all of this, if for whatever reason the financing did not make it, what the authority is saying is that they want to be the first line of defense in paying back this bond. And they have the resources to do it. They have voted to do so. And Blaine's also correct. We aren't putting taxpayer money into this. You are the backstop, if you will. The first line of defense in paying back the bonds is the authority. The second line of defense are the developments that will ensue around the new arena going forward. But the critical part is to be able to move forward and know that we can finish this correctly from now on, because we're only 11 months out.
And there's a hockey team for that ice?
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't gotten to Commissioner Culpepper yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to delay this to where we can get some better insight on what's going on. The Classic Center, they said that they can, they want to guarantee the funds, but what's going to happen to the Classic Center? We're going to start diverting funds from the Classic Center, and the upkeep of that, we start diverting funds to keep the arena. I think I would like for us to be able to really dive in and understand what's going on and understand the revenue stream and all the different avenues. To me, borrowing money to pay the bonds is kind of like taking a home equity loan out on your house to pay the mortgage. I really think we need to understand what's going on in the different revenue streams.
Commissioner Thornton?
Could I ask Mr. Kramer to come back to the...
Yes, absolutely.
My question is, maybe I've gotten this whole thing twisted. The developer is back at the table, and he was going to put some money on the table, but you came and asked us to add an additional bond because that's when he was off the table. Is that right?
That's correct.
Increased bond. Okay. No, did you have something that you wanted to
Well, I was
change?
going to say, think the initial approval for the third financing happened when the developer was still at the table. The
Correct.
13 million.
Correct.
So you've already approved the 13 million a month and a half ago.
The bond.
And then, I'm trying to make sure I got the timeline right.
That's correct.
And since then, the developer said, we've got to change the deal, and the new deal has us assuming some new costs that we didn't in the original deal, primarily the bridge and stair, and then also
Stormwater.
a portion of the stormwater vault, which, so there's going to be a regional stormwater detention facility that will be built as a part of the deck. And remember, all of this is going on an older stormwater facility that doesn't work very well anyhow. And so the new vault will be sized to accommodate the stormwater coming from about a 23-acre site. So it makes sense that we would participate in some of the cost of that because it's a shared stormwater vault. So that is a new part of the deal, 1.8 million, and then probably another 4 million or so. We haven't had it priced out yet for the bridge and stair. So those are new dollars that weren't part of the 13 million.
That's correct.
Initially.
And
there's other
I
things.
guess that's where I'm headed at. That's exactly where I'm going, because for those of us that this is not their area of expertise, it does get complicated. Because at the end of the day, with the developer back, and I guess that's why there is a request for additional funds because of the new stuff.
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
right?
That's correct. In part, that is correct,
Okay.
yes. We actually made this addendum going forward somewhat contingent on the fact that we were able to move forward with the bond, so we knew we had the funds to be able to do the things that we said we could do to get the developer back in. So one is connected to the other.
Follow-up?
Yes. Could, Mr. Stamp, is that his name? Could you
John.
come down? What is your serious objection for a 2 weeks stay?
I think that it's been a struggle to get to this point. Interest rates are continually in flux. I don't think 2 weeks helps us at all. I think during that, who knows what could happen during that 2 weeks? And if anything, in this project, I've learned that, things change almost on a minute-by-minute basis, if not an hour-by-hour basis. So as I said before, we're committed to the project, no questions about that. I think it would be our strong preference to move forward with it this evening, if that was at all possible. Can I sit here and tell you unequivocally 2 weeks from now, will we still be here? I can't say that. I'd like to think that we would be, but as we've learned, lots of things can happen over 2 weeks, so.
I really appreciate that you're back and that you're going to enhance this program. And I do get it about, you just don't know what 2 weeks are going to do. I just don't know how my constituents are going to feel. And with the changes, like he said, we got Friday, these are big changes.
Correct.
And if I'm struggling to be able to understand, I need to be able to articulate. I'm still going to go with my gut feeling with the substitute motion, and hopefully you'll be around in 2 weeks.
And I'm still struggling to try to understand a lot of it myself.
Okay.
It's extremely complicated.
I get it.
As the city manager mentioned, bridge and stair has been in a state of flux. Interest rates went up again a couple weeks ago, which then caused the pro forma to change again, which resulted in some of the conversations we're having as far as bridge and stair. So it's a very fluid situation.
Well, I guess my thought then too, Mayor, is that it's nothing we can do about the interest rates.
No.
They do what they do.
Exactly.
But some of the other things, I just don't think were clear. Has nothing to do with you as a developer or interest. Just other things that have been brought to my attention that I have questions about. But I thank you. I think that the arena's going to happen. Tiffany and I are going to go in prayer about this for 2 weeks. we're going to make sure that we're going to keep that interest rate low, but
This project's going to happen.
it's going to happen.
Commissioner Taylor hadn't had an opportunity, so I want to turn to you.
It is beautiful, the arena and the pictures. My main concern is the community benefit. The community benefit, not the people that's gonna come and see the show, not the hockey team that's gonna play, but the actual residents that get up every day and make Athens what it is. Therefore, we're gonna approve this third bond, that they paid their money into for a structure that they may not ever visit. So I want to know what the community benefits. And if you can't answer it, that's fine.
We're not
Paul
involved
can.
with the arena itself.
So you might want to hear from.
Yeah, from
Commissioner
Paul.
Kramer.
Thank you.
But they are involved with benefiting the community. When they come in and develop out the property that they're looking to build out, it will mean $3.5 million annually in tax allocation district revenue. That revenue can do lots of things for all the people that you're talking about. And that's what makes this project so great. This project, from the beginning, this commission has said to me, look, we want to do more than build an arena. We want to do something where we guarantee that there is a wage floor of $15.85 an hour, and we've done that. We want to create something that is sustainable, and we put solar panel all over the roof of this thing and all over the roof of the Classic Center. We've done that. We have done every single thing that you've asked for, including we have baked into this agreement that we have with the developer that they know that they have to sit down with you and knock out a community benefits agreement. That is embedded in the contract that we have right now. I promise you that the citizens within that tax district are going to benefit greatly, not just from the arena, but from all of the great work that John Stam's group is going to bring to this table and make this a wonderful project. This will probably be one of the greatest projects overall that this community has ever seen, not because of the arena, but because of the development that will ensue around the arena and the opportunities it will provide the citizens of Athens.
Something tells me you said that same pitch when the Classic Center was built, but
I wasn't here then, but
okay. No, Paul, I have another question.
Another question.
Residential.
yes.
This is going to be a beautiful structure. So what does the residential look like? Will there be $1 million condos? Will there be condos where residents can afford them? Maybe some employees?
Yeah, our hope is that it will be reflective of everything in this community. And I think that's what they're talking about with Mallory and Evans right now. Yes, to answer your question directly, there'll be some nice condos that go in. But there'll also be some workforce housing. There'll also be some market rate apartments that are going to go in. There's going to be some new restaurants that come in. And thanks to Melissa Link insisting that there was some activation area on top of this parking deck, we're going to have some green space up there that has very passive area for entertainment for somebody who may never walk into the arena. So yes, that whole entertainment district will come alive, and not only will it come alive for the citizens of Athens, but I think we need not forget it will attract some $30 million of new visitors coming into this community, all of whom will eat in our restaurants and buy things in our stores and make a huge difference to those individual people who own businesses in our community.
Also, because this structure is up and coming, do you think that there is a possibility that it could be so massive that it will go over the river, possibly into the MLK area?
No, ma'am, but I'll tell you this, it's going to connect our downtown with the river district like no other project ever has. It's going to enliven further development all up and down that river. And if, we have lots of visitors come through our doors right now. 400,000 people come to the Classic Center every year. And when they started the river walk, the Firefly Trail and whatnot, people couldn't understand how to connect to that. from our visitors coming in. But this project with the pedestrian access and the bike access and being able to get all the way down to the river, it's going to be a great connection for everyone.
All right, Mr. Kramer.
Mike, you follow?
Sure, thank you. And you know, I'm just say this, the arena is going to happen. But what we need to do tonight is to make sure we're doing our due diligence and looking at the numbers, looking at the revenue sources. And if 2 weeks is going to make or break what we're trying to do and doing our due diligence, then maybe we have a bigger situation than we realize. But also, this community has given a lot. I mean, they did vote to put it on SPLOST, but the community has also given all the land that is going to go around this to pay for this arena back, to pay that $100 million interest back. Sure, it's going to contribute $3.5 million to the TAD, but if you read through some of the documents, in one place it's 25% of the TAD dollars are going to go to the arena, and another place it's 40% of the TAD dollars are going to go to the arena. And what I want to do during the next 2 weeks is figure out which number that is, so that we can tell people over across the river what to expect from this new development and what benefits that they're going to get from this new development. So I think it's just being responsible for us to take a look at the numbers and to make sure that those revenue sources are there to pay the bonds. This is a $250 million project, probably going to be more than that by the end of the day. That's more than our budget that we spend, 2 months talking about. But we can't spend 2 weeks looking at the numbers and go from there. So anyway, that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
And just as a process question, I'll remind everybody that any tax allocation district expenditures first would filter through the resident tax allocation committee and then would come to a separate vote from the commission. So,
All right, I have a correction, a question, and some comments. My correction is, I meant to say options 1A through 1H. I misspoke and said 1G. So full approval there. My question, I'm not sure if this is for Paul or Judd, it might be more for Judd, but the CBA, the Community Benefits Agreement that the developer is going to have to engage in, when in their process would they be engaging in that, and with whom? Would that be with our TAD Advisory Committee, or with this body directly, or a body to be determined by the mayor? What's that look like?
Well, a CBA comes about when you have an application, potentially comes about when you have an application for TAB funds. In my conversations with my understanding is that the Classic Center Authority is going to be submitting that application. So it would come about, if you want to put a CBA in place, it would come about there. But
Okay, yeah,
I'm not
Mr.
sure how that's going to work if the developer's not seeking funds.
Yeah, Mr. Kramer spoke to the idea that their agreement, as it's written, requires a CBA to be drafted. So could you just speak to my question, maybe, Mr. Kramer, if you don't mind?
I will say, I'm aware that our intergovernmental agreements with the Classic Center Authority as written requires that there be workforce housing provided in accordance with a proposal, one of the proposals that was made to the, I forgot what the name of that group was, but it's in the intergovernmental agreement. But there's no specific requirement of our agreements with the Classic Center Authority, RIGAs, or the amendment that you're being asked to approve tonight that relates to a community benefits agreement.
Okay. So could we invite Mr. Kramer up just to answer if it's somewhere in that contract that you've got with the developer, since that's what you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, there are a number of documents that we prepared. The main one was the Fourth Amendment that sort of brought the Mallory and Evans group back in under contract. But there is a development agreement that really addresses a number of these issues. And in accordance with the IGA, we made sure that we wrote that in. So they will be required to sit down with you and work through a formal process. And we identified those trigger areas that you've talked to us about: workforce housing, wage floor, and sustainability. Those things are written into the development agreement.
Okay. So yeah, if I may, just a few remarks, since we're kind of debating what to do here. I'd like to still move forward on the original motion, which is approving it today. Could I have a little grace on the time, since I see that I'm at 30 seconds? Okay. I reviewed the many documents we've been sent, and I think the financial picture here is pretty clear in terms of spelling out like what needs to happen. I mean, it's about as clear as anything this massive and complicated can be, which is there's some amount of uncertainty and risk, but I feel like it's about as clear as we could expect. I haven't really heard from colleagues what specifically we need different in what we've been submitted to make it satisfactory, just sort of that people want some more time maybe to feel comfortable. And I just think we're always kind of balancing that discomfort with trying to move in a timely fashion against real factors that are out there and maybe more theoretical factors in the financial world, and the desire to be able to optimally explain things to the public. But I think it is incumbent upon us to simultaneously, review and understand what we've been given, but also try to have as much substantive conversation in these meetings as possible. What I've heard from the people, including our staff and the Classic Center staff, which is essentially our staff as well. We pay them to work. I mean, they have some independence, but they're an extension of ACC Gov. And also the board that we've appointed is a unanimous not only support of moving forward with this, but also kind of an urging that the time really is of the essence here. So I just hope that we will take that seriously and to kind of underscore a few of the reasons why I think that's important. One is, I don't think we should take lightly the assertion from Mr. Kramer that we might lose the deal. And what I heard on August 1st from colleagues was that the main reason we wanted to delay from August 1st to now was to get them back at the table and have a deal. Well, we have them back at the table and we have that deal, and that deal is pretty clear. So in my mind, I wouldn't want to invite the possibility of losing it again if that was really the whole reason we delayed to get here, especially acknowledging that that deal contains some really important things. For example, the special service tax district that we've talked about, this locks that in. That's extra revenue that we may not find a way to get otherwise that helps pay for this. That's basically the developer essentially agreeing to pay more in taxes while no one else has to. It's pretty rare that we're able to specifically tax one entity or just a few parcels, but this is letting us do that as part of that agreement. The need for an exit to the building, we've seen delays for all kinds of reasons, not in this project, but on all kinds of things, the Firefly Trail and everything else. We're already hair thin on that timeline to get an exit from this massive building. And I just think we'd be remiss to not get that built because a giant arena with no legal way out means nothing's happening there. And to another point that I know Mr. Kramer raised, we need events to be happening there, not only ASAP to generate that revenue to pay back the existing bonds and to generate TAD revenue, sooner the better, but also for this to really be the economic engine we want it to be. I think it needs to be thriving and with a good reputation. If we're signing a bunch of deals with different organizations to come perform at this thing, with a hockey team to be here, and then we, after all those things are in place, keep walking back the timeline, not only may we lose some of those events, but I imagine there might be a ripple effect in terms of our reputation there. So, when I think of that range of that 13 million to 25.8 million that is captured in this agenda item, if I knew on August 1st what I know now, I probably would have said this then, but it took me till now to kind of wrap my head around all this. But I feel like we need to kind of empower our people, and that range is actually, in my view, a way that we empower our people, seeing the Classic Center as an extension of our people, to really have that leverage, to make sure that this deal does stick, and if for some reason it doesn't, we're still in a good position to make a good deal happen with someone else. So for the remaining concerns about the overarching project giving us enough community benefit, which, to be honest, I still share. I'm thrilled about the 1585 wage floor. I think that'll have ripple effects beyond the Classic Center to an industry that chronically underpays. But I think that maybe channeling our energy toward that CBA that we know is coming, and maybe modeling it after what we did with the mall agreement, but perhaps building from that to do it even better, and to talk about things like affordable housing, not just workforce housing, childcare, minority women-owned businesses, based on what we've learned from the disparity study. I think that community benefits agreement might be a really good place for us to put that focus and make that as strong as possible with the private developer once we've locked them in today. But I have a lot of worry about us delaying further and what that really gets us. Thanks.
Commissioner Thornton.
I guess my concern is that when this project came before us, we talked also about childcare. We couldn't do childcare because of the rocks. And then, to me, that's something that somebody should have done. And then we had this whole rock incident that I guess the bonds took care of it. But that's kind of in my mind, that happening. The other thing is, when we first started talking about the TAD, I think Paul mentioned the TAD, that we could use the TAD to pay for the deck. We didn't talk about any other options that TAD dollars could be used for. That I may be wrong, but I don't remember. But I do remember the TAD paying for the deck. And then there was one other thing. Oh, God, what was it? I think that after the two bad experiences we have had, some of the newer commissioners, you're not getting the pushback. But we've made some decisions because we made these votes because of a feeling of desperation. One situation we're dealing with right now, and that's because we made a decision because there was this call for urgency, and I voted for it too, so I take blame. And the other one was how that whole situation with the Lexington Road housing, that turned out nothing like what was presented. I would like to see these all of these communities, why can't we see that stuff in advance? You know, why can't it be a part of the discussion and the vote? I would be interested on what the TAD Advisory Committee is saying. We're hearing from the authority and their board, but we have a TAD Advisory Committee that is really reflective of it's really reflective of people, of different people, I'll put it that way. So, again, I think this is a great idea, but after getting burnt a couple of times, and you've never burnt me, Paul, never, but I'm just a little cautious now about my votes. Like I said, we're dealing with a situation right now that was made because of a little pressure. And 2 weeks, at least, if it passes, I'm good, but I want my constituents and people to know I felt that I needed 2 weeks.
Weeks ago, we were heading in a different direction. 2 weeks from now, we're going to be back at the table, and we'll have a better understanding of what we're being asked to do. Can all of y'all honestly say what revenue sources are being paid for through that first bond? Can you tell me what revenue sources are being paid for by the second bond? The third bond has some points in here listed, but if you look at the third bond and compare it to the second bond and compare it to the first bond, is there some overlap in any of those? And do the numbers add up? And I'm sure they do, but it's our job to make sure they do. And if we're not doing that, then we're not doing right by the investment that this community is making. They're making a $34 million SPLOST investment, but they're making the investment, which is a good investment of all that land around there that's going to generate TAD dollars for a strong community benefits program. So there's that investment we're making too, that the community's making. So it's our due diligence to make sure that we can tell everybody where these revenue sources are going to pay, or what revenue sources are going to pay these bonds back. Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I love how democracy works, and, we can go back and forth between, whether or not we should move forward or kick the can down the road. But I think at the end of the day, it seems like all of us really are in agreement that this is gonna pass. So again, what I say to my colleagues, will 2 weeks really make a difference if we're gonna go ahead and vote and push this through anyway? Because again, the building has started, it's there. So, and I think a couple things we need to consider. We're gonna get the Music Hall of Fame. We'll have a first ever African American museum in this community. So, I just don't, I just think we need to go ahead and move forward. Let's take a vote. And again, either way it goes, we all in this thing together. But let's just take a vote on it. But I just want to remind my colleagues, it seems like all of us are on agreement that it's gonna pass. So, is 2 weeks really gonna make a difference?
You want to call the question?
Call the question.
Call the question.
I've got a motion from Commissioner Wright to call the question.
I'll second.
All right, second from Commissioner Link. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we're going to begin with the substitute motion that's on the floor.
Just a procedural question. Are we holding for 2 weeks until the 29th? Or is the motion to hold until the next scheduled meeting? on
The next
September
scheduled
5th?
meeting, which is.
Motion would be to hold till September 5th.
Regular voting meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, because people were saying 2 weeks, but that is actually 3
Transparent way of
weeks. right?
Be the September 5th. So we'll begin the substitute motion. Roll call with Commissioner Hamby.
Andy?
Yes.
Davenport?
No.
Link?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Wright?
Yes.
Fisher?
No.
Poole?
No.
Culpepper?
Yes.
Myers?
No.
Thornton?
Yes.
6 yes, 5 no. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 6 yes, 4 no.
Okay. Motion passes.
All right, motion carries. And motion was to continue the voting meeting September 5th. September 5th.
May I just ask a parting question?
Please.
I feel like on August 1st, when we held with specific instructions on why, which was we want an agreement, and we want that to be with the developer if possible, and we want it to look something similar to what we were expecting in terms of dollars. So I just ask, since we've now passed the motion to hold, I heard colleagues raise up different concerns around what could be in the CBA or whatever else. I mean, is there anything specific that anyone's looking for that will make this agenda item something everyone's comfortable with, something that we need specific clarity around that we haven't already received?
I think we've had that discussion, Mayor. I've laid out the revenue sources and where they
So I
overlap.
heard exactly that. So if we would see each bond and the revenue streams that will fulfill each of those, that's one thing I heard.
We can put it in an email.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to new business. I need a motion for suspension of rules for new business. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Fisher. I've got a second from Commissioner Thornton. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we're now working under suspension of business. So item 2 is the Sheriff's Office request for FY23 contingency funding. And I think there's a ordinance that would go along with this, is that correct? Attorney Drake?
Yes, sir, let me get that. An ordinance to amend the FY 2023 annual operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to provide funding to cover outstanding expenses for medical services for in-custody residents which may exceed budget in the sheriff's office and for other purposes.
All right, is there a motion regarding this item?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Wright and a second from Commissioner Thornton. Commissioner Wright, follow-up comments?
Saving my voice. Thank you.
Commissioner
I'm
Thornton?
good.
Commissioner Hool?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on some questions I sent by email to staff. I believe everyone was copied on. A little confused by this, some of the details in this at least. I'm trying to pull up that email, sorry, catching up on, where's, there we go. So, I guess the first one is, why is this on our special called session agenda with urgency instead of just part of the regular cycle? Is there a need for this to happen today instead of September 5th?
Well, they're beginning to close out of the previous fiscal year, and so I think the thought is that we would access funds from last year's contingency to pay for bills that were encountered in last year's budget year.
Okay. So I guess pending the answers to these other questions, we can't do it on September 5th, is that what I heard you?
Finance Department recommends that we address this now. Waiting until September, we've already moved into the new fiscal year financially.
But is there any practical reason why, since we're already in the new fiscal year financially, there's a difference between now and September 5th?
We'd have to get that exact answer from finance, but there's a period of time we have to close the books for the previous fiscal year, and we're still in that, but we might not be there come the next meeting in 3
Okay.
weeks.
I don't know if that's an answer that's readily available. Sorry, I know I tried to ask it earlier today, but because there's some stuff in here that troubled me. I don't know if maybe the sheriff can elaborate on it. But if you look at facts and issues 7, it says that Armor hasn't provided any written justification for expenses and hasn't provided documentation around what they did or did not cover to sort of clarify whether there isn't some kind of duplicative ask of these entities, say Piedmont or whoever else, where Piedmont's now contacting us or National EMS is contacting us saying they have these things that weren't paid, but did Armor already pay them, or is Armor going to pay them after we pay them and then we end up paying them twice? I mean, I feel like we need that documentation to feel more comfortable on this, but certainly at the very least, there were 2 line items specifically that really troubled me, which is over $100,000 for Armor. I mean, I just don't know why an organization that we got out of contract with because there were so many problems. And I really thank our sheriff for leading the charge on getting us a hopefully much better healthcare provider. But why we would give 6 figures to that entity that's not giving us documentation and that we're out of contract with is just very odd to me. And then there was also another one, it's a much smaller amount, but it just says infectious disease. I can't imagine there's any company out there called infectious disease. So I don't know where that $3,000+ is going. So if anyone can clarify those things for me. And then also if someone can clarify, you said we're paying for this money with contingency funding from last year, but my understanding is the contingency funding from last year is part of what rolled into our contingency from this year. So is that not right? I mean, from a bookkeeping perspective, maybe that's how it would be book kept, but if we've got, $1.8 million in contingency between what was in the mayor's proposed budget and then the budget that passed with the commission find option from Commissioners Hamby and others, is this basically 20% of that 1.8 million?
I have to ask the finance staff, but what we've been told as recently as today is that there's $438,000 remaining in last year's contingency that could be accessed.
And that's not part of the 1.8 million?
428, sorry.
That's not part of the contingency that was calculated for this year's budget?
I mean, there's unassigned fund balance, it's different. I mean, I don't know if it's dollar for dollar the same. I mean, it goes back into the unassigned fund balance, and out of unassigned fund balance, you have created this year's contingency. So it doesn't have to be the same dollars. I mean, it's $400,000, though, make no mistake.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to make sense of whether that $400,000 you're speaking to is part of the roughly 1.8 that we finished our budget approval thinking we had in contingency and unallocated.
Well, I think
or if it's somehow in addition to that. Does that make sense?
Well, just proceed. Finance can correct me on this. So at the end of the year, the unspent funds go back into unassigned fund balance, and then when you create the new budget, you go back into unassigned fund balance and put it in there. So it's not necessarily the same dollars, and you're taking away from this year's contingency, but there will be $411,000 less of unassigned fund balance because of this action.
So that makes me think that this, essentially, with the way that budget was presented, this gives us $411,000 less of what we thought we had in the overall picture. We didn't just discover additional money that wasn't somehow captured in the last budget, I guess is my point.
No, I mean, this is...
So, I mean, is there
It
any
doesn't affect this year's
clarification
contingency, though.
on why it's recommended to give basically a quarter of this money to the very entity that's not giving us documentation? And also what is meant by infectious disease?
I'm going to defer to the sheriff and his staff on the specific questions about Armor and the invoices.
Somebody from the sheriff's office like to speak to this?
Right, so the answer to that is not quite as complicated as y'all's last topic, but at the end of the day, these are bills that right now, as written, we're on the hook for. Until we can find and gather enough information to say, not unlike if you got a bill at your house from Georgia Power or whatever. Georgia Power says you owe $400,000, unless you can prove that you don't, you owe it. We're in the process of right now trying to vet these things. So we've had some success with National EMS. We've had a little bit of success talking to Piedmont. The problem and the holdup has been armor. And so what I can tell you is, in the past, this has always been the case, but it just so happens that these overages were usually taken care of by salary savings when we had that as an option. We don't have that. That's why we had to ask for a little more last year and then this year. The county's going to be on the hook one way or another. It's a little bit easier for us to understand how to get there and to get it with these contingency funds and hopefully be able to audit much better. We've got our position up for our medical contract oversight person. We've got some good applicants. Hopefully within the next month or so, we can have that spot filled and we won't be back in front of y'all again with this same thing. But we've always had these overages for medical costs, because medical costs, just like interest rates, they fluctuate. And they're higher than ever since COVID. So some of those bills coming in, they may very well be legitimate. Right now, that's the number that we have. It could go down a little bit, but it's not going to go greatly down.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. Hearing that, and I guess just seeing that Armor is one of the entities listed here and that you're not getting cooperation from, I would think that if you're able to communicate to them that we're holding because we don't understand why we should be giving them more money, that might entice them to respond. So I just don't feel comfortable giving more money to this company that's done a lot of things that have, I think, made all of us and our sheriff quite uncomfortable, and worse than uncomfortable to many people who have worked at or been held in the jail. I don't feel comfortable approving this as is without that explanation from Armor and without some staff from either the sheriff's office or our manager's office being able to run the rabbit on making sure that we're not essentially paying for something Armor should have already paid for. So that's a motion to hold until September 5th and seeking clarity on those things that I've asked
Commissioner,
about.
what I can tell you is, me and my staff have been in communication constantly with the county attorney's office to look at other remedies and other processes. We were on a long Zoom call this afternoon just addressing this very thing. And it's my position that even if we get these funds approved, because there is some urgency to that we've asked for up to that amount. And if we can get that amount down and exclude some of those things, we absolutely will. We don't want to spend this whole money. My goal is to be a good, the taxpayers' money, we want to spend it the way we need to. And that's always my goal. In this case, I think we need to hold a pocket of this money. That's why we came before now. And if we can prove, if we can get that documentation and verify what is ours, what's not. What happens sometimes, even, just so y'all know, they'll bill, the hospital or EMS will bill, if PD takes somebody, it could be somebody that should have been charged to the PD. So that's some of the just policies and practices that get out there. It may be some of these people were, hey, they were under the PD's care or GSP, but until we get that documentation back to see what Armor did and did not pay, we can't really ferret out all those specific amounts.
Commissioner
I'll
Thornton?
second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Davenport, and thank you, Sheriff, for the explanation.
Substitute motion from Commissioner Houle to hold to September 5th, and a second from Commissioner Davenport to hold to September 5th.
It's to hold till September 5th and to get whatever information our staff and Sheriff's Office staff can get to answer those questions, which are also, I emailed earlier today.
And Sheriff, does that put you in a bind by holding it to September 5th?
Absolutely, just, they can't necessarily cut off services, but it's a bill. They could send us collections just like anybody's personal bills.
It would be pretty ironic, though, I think, for Armor, for example, to send us to collections when they're not even giving us a justification for it.
Let me follow up. I've got a few hands. I'm going to start with Commissioner Thornton.
So my understanding that this request, it's not like you're going to just send them this big check. You're combing through to see what is legit and what isn't legit. And then you've been in conversation with our attorney to look at other options. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct. We're doing our due diligence, but we're kind of up against the wall now, and that's why we're here. We're just trying to make sure that if any or all of this amount is deemed to be appropriate, that we have that in place, because once we say, okay, this is legitimate, then we got to pay it.
But you're not just arbitrarily sending Armor or anybody else.
No.
I do think that, and what was that you said, Jesse, about infectious?
Yeah, I mean, one of the line items that's listed is just infectious disease, whereas the rest of them are companies.
Do you know what that is?
I don't offhand. We do have the invoices. So the invoices that we have that have been verified, there are some under there. I don't have the exact amount what that is. The ones in question are the ones that took us to, hey, this amount, up to this amount.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Myers?
I'm not sure if this is parliamentary correct, but I'm wondering if we can offer a friendly amendment to our substitute motion here to hold the Armor payment, which is for $100,619 till September, but go ahead and allow the sheriff's office to follow through in the finance with the other payments.
I mean, I'm still concerned about this prospect of we're getting directly communicated with by entities like Piedmont and National because they didn't get paid, but as I understand it, they probably should have been by Armor, and Armor's not giving us clarity on what they did and did not pay for. So I understand the spirit of your motion, but I'd rather just, if we're holding on some of it rather than versus all of it, it causes the same issue for finance, which is that the books aren't totally closed, right? So I guess I would, if people are more comfortable with holding than approving, which is where I'm at, then,
Is there any other commission input before we run through the substitute motion and then contemplate if that doesn't pass the
Can I,
main
if,
motion?
if I could have my, Captain Freeze has recently joined us, and he's going to be headed up our budget division. He has some things I think he can add to clear up some things for you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Captain Freeze?
So I appreciate the opportunity to provide clarity, and certainly the manager's office and finances have been wonderful partners to us with the county attorney. Our process, to be sure, is one of good stewardship of the public trust. The invoices we're receiving from our local providers were at our request to ensure that we, as a sheriff's department, us as a local government, make whole those community providers for the medical care that they've given to those that may be in custody. So we've been in a process of review over the last 6 weeks, give or take, of looking at the information we have. We have communicated with Armor on a number of occasions. They provided partial information. We have what they've paid under contract, and we've cross-checked that with the invoicing that we've received from our local providers, again, wanting to make our local providers whole for the expenses that they've incurred for those in our custody. There are two other issues that we're working with Armor on that they seem to be resistant in providing. What are they in process of paying, and what have they declined payment for any number of different reasons. Most of them seem to be related to the date of submission of invoice. We're communicating readily with Armor. We're getting that information. It's in process. My job is to work with the administrative staff we have at the sheriff's office to ensure that when we get invoices, patient bills from our local service providers, we're cross-checking that with what has been paid by Armor and what has not been paid, so that we're not duplicating payment. We're also taking the same information and making sure that all of those invoices belong to us. About 22%, 23% of the invoices we've reviewed so far belong in combination to the police department and the services they've provided, those in their custody, the Georgia State Patrol and other agencies that are working with us to provide for the public safety. So in answer to most of your questions, and I'm happy to entertain any other questions that are there, we're in the process of doing that now. I come from a long career in public finance elsewhere. So coming here, I understand the pressure the local government has to close out a fiscal year. The goal of getting this in process approved and to us is really an opportunity for them to close out FY '23 in a proper fashion with the dates that are confined for them through both the GAP procedures and GASB's regulations that George. There are a number of machinations that are going on, and they're all happening simultaneously to get this stuff paid and cleared out. The $100,619 is the amount, if all of these obligations were paid, that we would pay to Armor for the services they provided, should they be the ones providing payment. If they don't provide payment, we wouldn't pay them for that. So that's kind of the discussion with the legal counsel at this point, is how can Armor, if Armor wanted to vacate their agreement and move beyond, we wanted to close it out and settle, move beyond. Our goal is to make sure that our local service providers are made whole, whatever the process that we end up with. There's certainly adequate cross-checks that we have underway now, trying to make absolutely certain that we're good stewards of the public trust and that we're not paying anything twice, that we're ensuring that we're paying only for those in our custody and no one else. And again, the receipt of those patient bills, that's at our request. This isn't a collection issue from our partners in the healthcare community here in town. I will get you tomorrow before noon the full title of infectious disease. I believe it's a pathology organization that deals with HIV/AIDS in the community, is who they are. So they've done some HIV/AIDS issues for some of our inmates.
And can I just clarify while you're up there? Two things. One is, this is to pay invoices that date back all the way to FY '21, right? Am I correctly reading?
One invoice from '21 and 9 from '22.
Okay. And then how many from FY '23, the rest?
Probably 400.
Okay.
So the majority are FY '23.
Okay. And then, am I correctly understanding that you feel like you've got a clear understanding from our local service providers on basically all of these things that are listed as line items under Facts and Issues 8, except Armor and infectious disease, but?
Yeah, I get you the title for infectious disease. I apologize that we don't have the exact name, but yeah, I'm very comfortable with the numbers we've gotten from Piedmont and from National EMS. The other providers, again, small amounts that have come in that are for total care. Usually they're sub-providers within a care setting, either the hospital or some other environment of that sort.
Thank you. And so I guess, I mean, to hearing that some of these invoices date back quite a bit, and this is maybe a question for Manager Williams, I mean, why can't finance close out the books, and then the same way we're using, as proposed here, this money to pay for FY '21, FY '22, we could just use the FY '24 funds that are going to roll over from FY '23 anyway to pay for all these invoices once we've got more information.
It's 400,000 of unallocated fund balance, so you can pay for it one way or the other. It's better to pay those bills in the year they're incurred, though, generally.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'd be amenable. I mean, this is maybe a complicated thing, but what I'm not interested in is saying, sure, let's give $100,000 to Armor, who's been a huge problem and hasn't given you all any information. So if we want to say, what's the total amount less 100,619? I'll do that real quick and say, substitute motion to approve that. And hold on the
Commissioner
rest.
Hamby has a question while you're doing the subtraction.
And just to make note, we're not paying anything, this is an up-to allocation. We're not paying anything until we're absolutely certain that those obligations are ours, and they'll either be paid for through the arrangement with Armor, as should be done, or if that's not possible, we'll make whole our local service providers directly.
Commissioner Davenport.
So I just got a question on
Yes, sir.
Facts and Issues number 6. Maybe it's, again, unanticipated medical expenses from FY '22 were paid out of the FY '23 budget. And hospitalization costs paid outside of the Armor contract and over the contract caps of 150 totaled 131,581 for the term July 1st, blah, blah, blah. So we had a cap of 150,000. And we went over that and paid an additional 131, and now you're asking for another 100,000.
So I can't speak to the detail of the contract. Chief Woods might be able to. What we do is essentially, Armor provides a service of processing these invoices for us. We budget with them a fixed amount for that payment of medical services. Anything beyond the thresholds that are agreed upon would be in excess of that amount. It would be added to the cost. And I think that line item reflects that relationship.
You might remember, Commissioner, that at some point there was a population threshold with this provider, and when we moved beyond 400 inmates, for example, then there was a supplemental fee. So that's an example of this kind of
Very
relationship.
small percentage increase. A lot of this is utilization. It's an increase in medical cost, which continues to be a challenge for us as Americans, and an increase in census population at the jail that required healthcare services for the periods of time that we're discussing.
The other thing is that the fact is that this country and the world right now, people are sicker than they've ever been. And so there's more trips to the hospitals, there's more needs for diagnosis, there's more ongoing care, so whether it's mental health care or opioid addiction involved, there's a lot more need for medical care. When they're in a jail, we can't just, somebody who's just at the house, their mom can say, I'm not taking them to the hospital. We don't have that luxury to be able to say, yeah, we're not going for this. We're there to provide people with services, and if they're sick or appear to be sick, we have to take them, and that leads to overages.
I share the same sentiment as Commissioner Houle, but I look forward to hearing from my colleagues.
Commissioner Hamby?
Sure. I'm just going to say, why don't we just take, like has been suggested, take the $100,000 out from Armor, let these folks determine what it is exactly they owe Armor, and then come back to us, but give them allocate the 889. And
Yes, I'm happy to revise my motion to approve the allocation of 310,889 and then table anything else remaining.
So everybody's clear, we would be approving expenditures up to that amount, with the exception of the Armor component, which we would return to upon some further investigation. So would you be okay with that, a
Yes.
seconder? All right, so there's a motion from Commissioner Houle, and a second from Commissioner Davenport as amended. Andrew
Well,
Williams.
I would just point out, if that bill, comes in '24, then we will pay for it out of their existing line item. And then we can see if you need to add anything at the end of next year. Does that make sense? Like, because the bill will be received in this year, we'll pay for it out of this year's funds, and then, so if you do this and the bill comes in, I don't think we're going to be coming back to you in 3 weeks. Most likely.
Okay. All right, everybody understand that?
Yeah.
All right, folks like a,
The motion hold, September 5th is withdrawn.
Yeah, I
Yes.
withdrew and replaced it with a motion to approve, is it 310,889, is that right?
I thought we had a substitute motion on the floor from Carol. To that
It's a
effect.
friendly amendment.
Well, it's more than an amendment now. Can we go with the substitute motion that is to pay everything but Arbor? Isn't that what we're looking for?
that's right.
And not try to hold everything hostage for the jails, medical?
That's right.
Bills,
So
thank you.
it's to pay everything, kind of less the Armor amount.
So it's not changing a motion, it's going with the substitute motion.
So that's the motion that's on the floor.
Perfect.
D-
Thank
d-
you.
Do we need a roll call?
And Tiffany seconded it, didn't you?
And so, Judd, do you have to read a new budget ordinance?
We all. The ordinance. I mean, they would have,
I can clarify, for parliamentary procedure purposes,
I mean, the reality.
Commissioner Myers did not make a motion. Commissioner Myers said, would you accept a friendly amendment?
Right.
Which is actually not parliamentarily a thing.
No, it's not.
You can make a motion to amend, which we didn't hear, or you can make a substitute motion, but you can only have a motion and one substitute motion.
Right.
Since I had a substitute motion on the floor,
Right, I couldn't
Commissioner
put a
Myers asked if I'd be willing to revise it.
Yes.
It's obviously a substantial revision, so I said I will withdraw my original substitute motion and replace it with a motion to approve just the amount of 310,889.
Well, we'll have to revise I read the heading to the budget ordinance, but it'll have to be revised, I think, to reflect this new, let me see.
Yeah.
This nearly $100,000 difference.
I forgot I made a motion on the floor, it's been so long. Okay, but wait a second, we just had to talk it out. Yep.
So do you want the dollar figure, Judd?
Yeah, I'm getting to it. I was pulling back up. Let's see here. So an ordinance. So now it'll be up to $310,889.
Okay, and everybody understands that?
So you'll be moving, decreasing other general administration contingency funding up to $310,889. And increasing sheriff's office operating expense up to $310,889.
Okay, yep. Everybody clear? Yep. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed?
I'm opposed. I forgot I had a motion for the whole thing from the beginning. I'm still supportive of what the sheriff asked for to begin with.
Okay, all right, so 9-1, please note, Madam Clerk, Commissioner Wright opposed. All right, item 3, the attorneys are still doing some drafting on, so I'm just going to ask for a motion to hold, date to be determined.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Fisher to hold, date to be determined, second from Commissioner Taylor. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I do need a motion to exit the special called session.
So moved.
All right, motion from Commissioner Hamby, second from Commissioner Thornton to adjourn special called session. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are now going to move on to our agenda setting session. The agenda setting session features a consent agenda, which are items 1 through 9, old and new business items 10 through 19 and 23, and then it features 3 planning and zoning items, items 20, 21, and 22. So we'll have public input first on the consent agenda, thank you, then on old and new business, and then individually following presentations from planning and zoning staff on each of those planning and zoning items. Did want to ask at the outset of the meeting, is there any commissioner who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Commissioner
I'd
Wright?
like to have 8 moved out, please.
All right. Is there any other item Commissioner would like to have removed from the consent agenda?
Was that item 8 that you removed?
8, magic, 8 ball.
I wanted to withdraw 2.
All right, I'm going to move 2 from the consent agenda per Commissioner Myers. Any others? All right, I'd ask members of the public, please approach the mic, give us your name and the item to which you're speaking. If you would like to speak to any of the consent agenda items, which are now 1, 3 through 7, and 9. 1, 3 through 7, and 9. Would anyone like to speak to any of those items? 1, 3 through 7, or 9? All right, those will be handled with a single vote at our voting meeting September 5th. All right, we're going to move on to public input on any old or new business. So that now includes items 2, 8, 10 through 19, and 23. 2, 8, 10 through 19, and 23. 2, 8, 10 through 19, and also 23. Come on down. Do the twist.
I hope I heard you right, so if I didn't, I apologize. Mike McClendon from Princeton Mill. I wanted to address item 11 and item 14 under new business. I understand, I think, the Neighborhood Leaders Program, but I would just encourage you to change the name of that. They're not leaders, they're social workers, caseworkers. Leaders are people who are appointed or elected. They are not. No one in our community has any idea who their neighborhood leader is or what the name neighborhood leader means. Second of all, when you look at the presentation that they made and you get in and look at the numbers and you think about, I think 18 people are listed in that document that you were given, and you count up roughly 220 work days a year and 8 hours a day, and you do the arithmetic of how many hours that they work, how many days they work, and you look at what the outcomes are, they're not very productive. So I would encourage you, before you start allocating more dollars, you consider whether this is an appropriate use of general funds, and also whether or not the goals have been set appropriately, and really find out what they are actually doing. When somebody says, well, I'm doing a referral, nobody has any idea what that means. So I don't think they're really being very productive when you're out there. And the second point I want to make is pretty much for our homeowners association on stormwater financial planning. Just like a lot of people have difficulties dealing with the water department on their water bills, my folks have no understanding of why they're being charged stormwater fees. We have a nice little 10-unit condo with a little pavement in the back. Everything drains from all our gutters onto our own pavement and into our own holding pond that we're responsible for, and then it drains into our own little ditch that we're responsible for into the 100-year floodplain, into a little creek which goes into the Middle Oconee River. So we don't understand why we're paying stormwater fees, because we see no tangible benefit, particularly because Athens-Clarke County never completed the 2002 stormwater plan. And all the projects that are in there, including some on the south end of Lumpkin Street. So as you think about approving the financial plan that they proposed, consider, the fact that a lot of us don't get any benefit out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to any of those items of old or new business? Again, that's 2, 8, 10 through 19, and 23. Evening, Sheriff.
Hey, I'm Sheriff Williams. I would like to speak to item number 2. I don't know if you all have enough information, but I just want to see what we can do to get this back on the agenda. Training is paramount in law enforcement. There's cries all across the country for more and better trained officers. I and the Sheriff's Office as a whole really feel like we lose out when we do trainings online. Systems like virtual reality can help us immensely in achieving those goals. Officers on the street get de-escalation training, but our folks in the jail need it even more. We don't have the luxury of taking our time, giving distance, putting something between us and the people that are in the very units that our folks are working. So we need to be even more skilled in the art of de-escalation. These training simulators can afford us that opportunity. This training simulator in itself, what we're aiming for is to be able to provide training throughout the region. So that's for the PD, for UGA PD, for fire, for EMS, to all come in and use this virtual reality system and work together in tandem to get this necessary training moving forward to provide better safety as a whole. We can't afford to just do online, and we can't always recreate scenarios just with the bodies that we have. So I just ask y'all to continue to consider that. This is grant funding. We just need to get the system, and we can utilize it as best we can. And it's going to prove to be very valuable moving forward if we do prove able to bring those into existence. So that's my plea. We have a whole lot more in the packet if you want to read more about it, but we would definitely be at a loss or a disadvantage if we're not allowed to have this system in place.
Thank you, Sheriff Williams. Anyone else here to speak to old or new business tonight? All right.
Not yet.
23 is affordable housing strategy, yes.
I would like to see if that name could be changed from affordable housing investment, because that's a name that is no clear definition of affordable housing. Is any other term or name could be used that to justify what people really need? Because affordable housing can mean anything. Any person who makes $1 million can afford $1 million house. A person makes $100 cannot afford $1 million, so it's not affordable still. So the term affordable housing, I think we need to change that some kind of way. Put low income or moderate income or elite income, wealth or whatever, but don't use the term affordable anymore.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
My name is Barbara Daniel. I'm still out here trying to get affordable homes. I've been listening and listening and listening and listening, but everything coming up all except affordable homes. I hear on Creek Meadows, people are moving out their house left and right. Reason half of them they told me is because the taxes went up. A lot of them told me because they doing the new mall, they gonna redo the mall, that means the taxes going up. Stonehenge, they telling me the same thing. I wanna know what's going on with these affordable homes. I mean, it's a way that we can come up with some kind of way to get these people off the street. Some kind of way to keep these people in their homes. I don't understand why it's so hard. It's easy for y'all to come up with money to do this civic center. It's easy for y'all to come up with some money to do other things. But when it comes to poor folks, y'all just push them away. I represent y'all. I try to get y'all to come out to help us. Less than the height, people leaving left and right. I was at less than the height. Ain't nothing changed. Everything's still the same. Everything high. Now, I'm over here in Creek Meadow, staying with somebody. They taxes done went up. They trying to help me, but they taxes went up. That might put me back out on the street again. I can't afford these $300-something thousand home. I can't afford this $1,900 a month. I can't afford it. Because if I could, I'd still be over there in Lexington Heights. Now, they building all these apartments or homes over there in Lexington Heights. We can't afford that. People calling me. I started out with a lot of people, but a lot of people got scared because they didn't want to be involved with it. But I'm not scared. We need help. And I know y'all can help us. I know y'all can. But it seems like y'all refuse to help. And that's not fair. I've been here all my life. They've been here most all their life. We are people that gonna stay here. We're not people that come here and stay 3 and 4 months. We are here for life. We put our monies out just like y'all do. They put their money out just like y'all do. Why can't y'all help us? Why can't y'all help us? Enough is enough. Can't you see all these different storms? You don't want God to come in. You definitely don't want him to come in, because when he come in, ain't nobody gonna be able to do anything. So please do something about affordable homes. We need an affordable home. Now, what I consider affordable home, you got a 2-bedroom apartment. Them apartments shouldn't be no $1,800–$1,900. Them apartments average it should be no more than $800. People can't pay that. They barely can pay the $800. They said, Barbara, I can't pay it. I can't afford it. I understand it because I can't.
Thank you, Ms. Daniel. I appreciate it.
But do something, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to begin commission discussion with item number 2. Commissioner Myers, you removed this from the consent agenda.
Yeah, I actually just took it off the consent agenda so I could speak positively to the work that I saw being done in here and the grant being applied for. I was very impressed by the work for the de-escalation, virtual reality, whatever it is, technology that they're applying for. Also, for the other work, there's a couple of other de-escalation programs that they refer to the work that the Sheriff's Department foresees helping out with neighboring neighboring communities as well. And then in the collaboration with UGA in terms of the outcomes that are listed here and the evaluation that's being done. So I'm fine with this being on the consent agenda because I know we all like, quicker meetings and such, but I did want to call attention to this positive work in de-escalation, which I know is something that we all appreciate seeing the sheriff's office taking a lead on.
Thanks, Commissioner. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Commissioner Taylor?
As a civilian police academy recent graduate, class of 2023, June, probably May. Anyway, the virtual reality de-escalation software that was used was realistic. Not only did we use it then, but me, John, and Dexter also was able to use it during our on-board orientation. I found it was an eye-opener to me, who was, I have my stance on the police, and to see them going, the extra mile to have de-escalation, not only for the police department as well as for the sheriff's department. I support it, long story short. It's great.
Thanks, Commissioner. Fine to move this back to consent?
Please.
Yes. Everybody good? All right. Moving to item 8, this is the Athens in Motion bylaw amendment. Commissioner Wright?
I'll have some questions for staff to get back to us, and then we.
Just going to send those via email?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, we're going to move on to item 10. This is the construction services contract award for the Athens-Clarke County Library and on-call solar photovoltaic system services award contract. Any questions about this?
Consent? Can we consent it?
Everybody okay with moving this to consent? No problem with that? Okay. All right, 10 is going to go on consent, Gene. All right, new business, item 11 is the neighborhood leaders contract renewal. Questions about this? Commissioner Thornton?
I sent out an email, I guess yesterday, and I shared some of my concerns. I would like staff to look at that and answer some of the questions and concerns I had. I really, and I think the biggest thing for me, I don't feel comfortable with the neighborhood leaders being in the general budget. I really think it came through contingency. So my question now, I guess after that $4 million contingency is all gone. Is that what I should expect?
Well, the FY '24 contingency, I believe, is at about 1.2 million. I'm trying to remember. The 400,000 or the subsequent 300 and something thousand you all approved will come out of FY '23. If there's a future bill, that $100,000 we talked about, then that would be paid out of current budget line items in the sheriff's office, and then if they run over, they could approach you again next year. So I think the 1.2 million in contingency should be intact at this point.
I think that we should use the content, that's what it's there for. We have a lot of other issues that I can't even believe how I've changed my opinion on some of this stuff after being on the commission for almost 4.5 years now. But I do think that with the problems that the challenges that we've had with infrastructure, housing, and density, the things that that we are responsible for too, as far as our constituents, I will vote for this for the June 30th, 2024 budget, because I think that's going to be the recommendation. But I do think that we need to re-examine how this is funded.
And just to clarify, so both the contingency and this $1.1 million are elements of the general fund. So they're both kind of in that big bucket.
But most people don't know that, and they just look at our budget. And the fact that they did not go through a RFP process, I hear grumbling about that. So we just want to, make sure everything is, I support the neighborhood leaders. My neighborhood leader, let me give Patrick a shout out, is awesome. So it's not that. I just want to make sure taxpayer dollars is either understood how they're being spent or really, I could even see the neighborhood leaders being in line with the interagency application. So I think that they should have the same responsibility of applying and demonstrating that those funds are being used.
So for future fiscal years, you'd look for them to be part of that kind of April set of presentations that we get from the library and
Exactly.
Council on Aging and others. Okay, it's helpful. Commissioner Davenport?
So yes, I'd like to not put this on consent. I will be reaching out to Terrace and Mr. Johnson, hopefully next week. I would like to see some restructuring. There are literally like maybe 8 neighborhood leaders out of the 16 that I know are actively involved in the community. And I just think 1.1 million is not a good use of taxpayer fund in that regard. There are a lot of things that the government asks the neighborhood leaders to do when it comes to surveys, community input, that I don't think is being done. I strongly feel there are some leadership voids within that organization as well. But I support the neighborhood leaders. Those are actually doing the good work, but the overall program needs to be restructured. And I hope my colleagues can get on board and make sure that we're maximizing the purpose, the use of what the neighborhood leaders was designed to do. But possibly a CDO, but I'll work with staff and my colleagues on that.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any others? All right, we're going to move on to item 12. That's the Downtown Development Authority Community Events Program funding for FY24. You remember as part of the budget engagement, this was increased to $250,000. And so on PDF page 312, of course, you can see the array of events. Any input on this side?
Consent?
Yes.
Consent?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Jean, item 12 is consent, making a note here. All right, item 13, and I want to appreciate the Property Committee's work. Commissioner Culpepper, Commissioner Davenport, Commissioner Wright worked on that. For item 13, this is the recommendation for lease of the Taylor Grady House. Do any of the three of you want to begin discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make some comments that might clarify anything you had, and hopefully we can put this on consent. I just wanted to point out some great changes and great strides that we've made with this new tenant. It's going to get more community accessibility and the ability to use one of our facilities, and there's going to be touch points on those and checkpoints to make sure that they're happening, and we'll learn more about those. And I mean, they did get SPLOST money for Taylor Grady House, so we want to keep it a community asset as well as keep it in good condition as a historic building. And then also within this, from our budget allocation, we have $200,000 allotted for space allocation assessment, which is different than our judicial space allocation assessment, so that we can go into this next year. I'm not sure when it's going to fit in with everything else, but understanding the needs that we have in our facilities for housing our staff and our making sure we're utilizing the space that we need, which could be one part of the Taylor Grady that's not being used right now. But facts and issues 17, 18, and history 36 should give you some highlights on that. But I think the committee would love for this to be on consent, and so would the tenants.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Link?
Yes, I would like for this not to go on consent. I'm having some discussions with constituents in the neighborhood immediately surrounding the Taylor Grady, and the Boulevard Neighborhood Association is meeting in the next week or two to look at this, to make sure that some of their concerns. I feel like it was inappropriate that this whole RFP process went forward without any representation from the neighborhoods, and there was no commissioner seated that actually represented that neighborhood. And I feel like the site selection, or the committee should have included somebody who had some knowledge of house museum or historic preservation or event planning to evaluate the RFPs. I know there was an initial RFP process, and there was an RFP that came forward, and it was rejected. I'd like to see the documentation about that initial RFP that went out, the entity that submitted or replied to that, any notes about why that was rejected, and then the second round. It looks like this RFP is being awarded to an entity that was basically created just to apply for this lease, which we've had issues with that. We're dealing with them right now, entities that are created just for this particular project. I have a lot of concerns about it. And I know that some of my constituents do too, and I just want to make sure that there's some transparency, and that we're going to have some certainty that this is an entity that can fulfill the needs of the community, and making this an accessible facility, because it hasn't been. It has not been a very publicly accessible facility for all these years.
Clerk Spratlin or Manager Williams, can you get those items for Commissioner Link so she can see the submissions from the prior round and the responses?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
we can get
and-
those. I would recommend you talk with the two commissioners that were on the committee, though. Commissioner Wright and Commissioner Davenport were there for the first round, and they were the ones that voted. And so
Okay,
I would recommend you talk with them about it. and they'll be
Yeah,
able to
I'd
catch
like
you
to
up.
talk with them, but I'd like to see the documentation first.
Yeah.
The actual documents. Yeah, the RFP, the call for RFP, the RFPs that came back for both rounds, and any notes from the meetings.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
And then you'll follow up with us?
Yeah.
That'd be great. And Commissioner Culpepper was added in as well, round two. So we'll, between the four of us, we'll get in that green room and get you up to date, because we did cover a lot of stuff, so we'd be happy to share it, not taking up everybody else's time.
Right, and I took your question, Commissioner Link, to be about the first round, but did you want documents for all?
It's both. I
Okay,
mean,
okay.
yeah, I mean, they're concerned about, how this process went down, and the fact that, you've got this neighborhood that has a great deal of interest in this property. I frequently get calls about noise and stuff and parking issues. Yet they feel like they've had no representation in the process. I feel like that as well, being someone who does also hear the noise from the Taylor Grady house, from my house.
Commissioner Davenport?
Yeah, it's just, we spent a year and a half on this topic. All of our meetings were open to the public. We reached out to the neighborhood surrounding. The first process, there were some legal issues that we had to do by the advisement of our county attorney to revisit this issue. I believe in the applicant who was chosen. We worked with staff. Staff had some concerns. They worked behind the scenes and said, okay, we're gonna fix this and make this whole for the community and for the surrounding community. I feel confident that the individuals involved are gonna be great stewards of the Taylor Grady House. We have mechanisms in place thanks to then Gavin Hassemer, and Beth, and I forget the Angel, and Saunders, who worked on an agreement to make sure that we're gonna that the tenant is gonna follow the rules and make sure that this place is gonna be a great benefit for the community. But I look forward to passing this through because I know the tenants are ready to provide the community a benefit.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Future tenants.
Commissioner Thornton?
I just want to ask one question, and I'm backtracking. We did pull off the neighborhood leaders off of consent. It's not.
It's not on consent.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Culpepper?
Yes, I think the group that has been selected for this lease has a ton of experience in event planning and historic preservation. I don't think it's a fair comparison to say it compares to the situation we're in right now, where these folks, that's what they've done, and they're proven in our community. I think it's a great opportunity to have this facility brought back up to where everybody can use it, everybody in our community can get the benefit of it. So I look forward to it moving forward.
Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, I actually had it's a backtracking question too, and I'm happy with item 12 staying on consent, but I was just wondering if staff could provide, I was looking at the facts and issues, and Central Services Director provided some guidance to the ADDA on how to augment the funding, since we put more funding in the budget for those events. And if that could either be shared forward with us, or if whatever the easiest, quickest, brief synopsis of just, what was the rationale used, since we have a bunch of events and it's not like there's a flat percentage increase that they all got. So I'd just like to understand, I'm sure at some point we'll get asked.
How those additional dollars were allocated.
Yeah, like what the rationale behind those additional dollars being allocated was, that's all.
So I
You
can
mean by the
speak.
ADDA?
I can speak, that if you looked up the ADDA meetings, I think that, are those, I don't know if those are archived like our
They're
other
not
ones.
broadcast.
Okay, but the minutes, you can look at the minutes. maybe.
I'm not sure that the minutes will really.
I think we get something from the ADDA directorship. There were, very briefly, and Mike want to.
Or yeah, if Mike can speak to it, I just want to know.
So some are kind of lump sum items where they effectively couldn't use much more money. Some obviously are larger in scope. And so it was really the nature of the individual project or activity that yielded the numbers that you see in front of you. Some, if it's an $8,000 activity, $9,000 wouldn't mean anything more to you. For some, Twilight is a good example, multi-day, various features and elements that happen throughout that couple of day series of activities. And so they could effectively use the funds. So Mike, do you want to lend it?
Sure. And then just looking at it, I think on page 7 of what I'm looking at, you can certainly see the funding request and the recommendation. And we do take into account, certainly the larger events that help generate these dollars and try to build up some of the smaller events as well. So the first priority was to try to meet everybody's funding request, and then scale it from there based on how new and the event is, and what we know that some of the larger events are able to attract for us. So I think perhaps Commissioner, maybe a conversation with Director Lynn, who helped put this together, might be helpful to you. But so the ADDA did, we always, this is one thing where we always hold and have long discussions about and make sure that we present something for y'all that you'll be pleased with. So
I think that's right. I'll have Co-Director Lynn of the Downtown Development Authority reach out to you.
Sure, yeah, maybe to clarify what I'm getting at here, I trust that there was a good rationale for this, and I'm happy with the agenda item as it is. I just think it's helpful to have something in writing to be able to point to when I don't forget what I heard. But 6 months from now, some organization, when they're applying next time around, might have a question about why they saw a bigger event get more funding, and being able to kind of clarify, having something in writing to refer to can just be
I'm
helpful.
certain that Wild Rumpus would wish we had voted on this tonight.
Yeah.
It's getting close.
All right, so everybody good with 13 as well? Can we move on to 14?
Wait, is 13, I've been distracted here by the out of
13 is the
orderness.
Taylor Grady House.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
no, it
okay.
moves so fast.
Yeah, no, on the 13, I just have a question about it. I'm looking in here, and it says that there's like a lot of letters of support from the community and as attachments, and then there's only one attachment. And maybe I have not had time to thoroughly review this, but I need to better understand who this is. Because I was looking in here and tried to look for a website or something about this organization, and like I said, maybe I missed it and one of my colleagues can point me to it, or
We could follow up afterwards.
Okay,
We can get you some of the committee materials.
okay, that would be wonderful.
That'll be all in there.
All right, moving on to 14, which is stormwater financial planning. Obviously had a work session about this last week. Mr. Fisher? Well, it's off consent.
Okay.
Keep it off.
Keep it off, yeah, sorry.
Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, on the stormwater financial planning, basically, I want to leave it on the agenda, but I will put forth the idea that I am going to move to hold this another month. I don't feel like there's been enough time for myself and my colleagues to really absorb this and the effect it has on different people in the community. This is such as our manager has pointed out, he and staff have visited in all corners of the community. I'd like to have an opportunity to let people in my district know that this is going on. I also need a little bit of help. So anyway, I'm giving you forewarning that I'm going to make that motion, and I'm talking to some of my colleagues who seem to be in agreement. I don't think anyone's in a big rush to pass this in September versus October so that we have more time to communicate with others about it. I am interested in seeing, learning more about what a bond would do. That was the last item, and of course, it's later now. We've been here for several hours, but the stormwater report was the last of many hours last Thursday. And so I'm interested to understand more of that bond idea that was put forth. Also, what kind of low-income credit or adjustment we could make, such as Commissioner Hool had brought up. And so I do want to learn about those. But in terms of these different service level plans, I reviewed this again today. And again, I need help understanding the two different ones. The current level of response on option one means we just don't go further than the right-of-way, right? We look at stuff. That's what I learned from your visit to my community, to my district. In option two, it adds driveway cleaning, a rock program, and additional street sweeping. Now, and I'm only asking about that because that's also included in option three. By driveway cleaning, I don't suppose you're going to come and clean my driveway. So could you clarify that? And also additional street sweeping, is that throughout the community, in chosen places in the community? And then when we're adding on C, it says sustainable capital maintenance. I need that clarified again as well. And even when the D option, the maintenance of drainage systems within single-family residence, when I started reading a little bit on that, that wasn't, I think the other day Commissioner Wright mentioned, oh, well, we want to deal with those. That's the option that would deal with the larger properties that have just been flooded, right, in parts of the community. But when I was reading it over carefully, it wasn't, we're not going to, I think we were providing the homeowner was going to provide the materials, and we were going to provide some design and some workers on that. So I need that all, maybe we don't need it today, but to get that all clarified so I can explain that to other people as well. Because I think you mentioned the other day having expectations be real clear. I know that my bill has come since last week, and I believe the original, the bills that you had listed in here as average was something in the $45 or $50. So I was a little surprised, I'm not complaining, that mine was 76, because I don't really have that big of a house or a big of a driveway. And so I just want to make sure I can explain this to people and know what the options are.
Just looking for a memo from staff.
Yeah,
Summarizing.
sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to ask real quickly, and I think this was part of the presentation from the way I remember it, that the standard drainage contract, that that sort of drainage improvement agreement, yeah, that we learned has been, and I see it's all crossed out here. Are y'all going to be coming back with something new that?
I appreciate you asking that question, because I was going to offer that, Commissioner Hamby. So the way that the agenda item currently reads we would come back to you, but actually, it's been rewritten already. And I was told earlier today that staff had entered that change into Provox, and it didn't save the changes. So we will amend the agenda item for you to approve the policy as presented or entertain a CDO.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious to see that, because one of the things I'd like to see happen with that is that, and I know we've been sort of restrictive as to how we can offer that service, but if the new language broadens it somehow, I'd certainly be interested in seeing that.
Well, and that's also tied to the level of service. So the ROC program that you've talked about. Now so there was a question about, Commissioner Myers, our forces on private property, and that type of thing. And we want to follow a model that we've seen in Gwinnett County where the homeowner is responsible for any improvements to their property, but understanding through a drainage improvement agreement that there is some mutual interest in the stormwater and where it's going, that we would actually provide the rock and leave it at the right-of-way, and then they can access that. So we would give materials and they would provide the labor, I think is the way it's currently proposed.
I think that's, just to quickly say, I think that's a good, what's the right word, benefit for added benefit, I hope, for a lot of folks that are working with their stormwater. And I think it helps with neighbor relations too, when you can figure out a way to work together and figure out how to solve it. Because we see that a lot with some of our stormwater. It's coming from different neighbors instead of the street and stuff like that. So this will help. Thank you.
Judd, I know you had an observation a minute ago.
I want to point out that, changing the level of service and if some of these policy decisions the commission are getting ready to approve would require some ordinance amendments to the stormwater, related to the stormwater utility ordinance. And so I just wanted clarification. I think, Blaine, you and I mentioned, this is, I want you to know there's going to be some ordinances coming behind this. I don't think they're going to be part of this action, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think.
Okay.
That's helpful. Yeah. Let's see, I had a few other folks lined up. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm happy to hold. I think it gives everybody more, for the reasons Commissioner Myers cited, and also to give ourselves and staff time to work on a CDO, but I'd be very glad to sponsor a CDO, to work with staff and any colleagues who want to. I would very much like that CDO to include the bond issuance, assuming staff continues to think that can make sense, and also to explore the waiver or discount program for low-income properties. So
we're researching that now and being prepared to provide a memo related to that.
Excellent.
And we're looking at bond scenarios.
Excellent. So, yes, giving you all more time to do that too, I think would be great. And it would also help if we're explaining to the public. I know one of the big concerns is not adding even more fees to people who are already struggling to afford their rents in their homes. And so if there's a way we can provide some relief specifically for those households, while also, using this fee for what it's designed to do, which is share the burden across the county based on your lot coverage, or based on the number of feet you've covered in buildings, whether or not you are otherwise paying taxes. I think that'll be great. And I'd also like to make a motion to do a very, very brief recess after this, since we're past 8:15, just for 5 minutes after this item.
We can take a quick break while we're getting set up. Commissioner Fisher?
Just quickly, also I had mentioned earlier, I'd like to see some other type of financing on monies that we could use to help with our stormwater SPLOST money, the dollars that we may not use. I understand with SPLOST project, once that money has been allocated for that project, we can't move it, but I would like maybe T-SPLOST or some other funds somewhere that we can use monies to help with our stormwater issue moving forward, hopefully, as a part of this, some of these options that we got on the table, so.
Yeah, and certainly bond financing could be a piece of that. We've got Commissioner Thornton and then Commissioner Link.
I'm going to pass. Thank you, though.
Yeah, I am interested in exploring some options for low-income property owners, but I also want to dispel any notion that not everybody benefits from our stormwater program. Even if you live in a hobbit hut in the middle of the forest, you probably used public roads to get there. And those public roads cross over stream culverts, and those cost a lot of money to maintain and replace, and we've seen some pretty catastrophic failures in recent years, and ever-increasing extreme weather, we're likely to see more. And even if you do have a stream on your property in which all your stormwater goes, that stream probably crosses under a road, either upstream or downstream. So, you know, if anybody out there, you know, does question the need for this program and the need for, you know, a collective input into the program, you know, understand that this is not just about your property, but it's about the conveyance of our entire road system. And, you know, lives can be lost very easily when somebody has a catastrophic culvert fail while they're driving over it.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Taylor.
To Commissioner Link's point, I think that moving forward, we should, as a body, do a better job at being transparent on what these things mean, because as a home renter, well, my parents own their home, and so they had questions about the stormwater fee as well, because they didn't understand how it benefited them. And when the increase came, it infuriated them, because they was like, I don't even know the benefit of why I have this. And so to say, you know, I just think we should do a better job moving forward, explaining to our constituents how this affects them, and more than just putting it in a one piece of paper in the water bill, but us actively speaking to our constituents about how the stormwater, and I don't think that there will be a pushback, because we all want a sustainable infrastructure. It's just lack of knowledge and that lack of communication on our end. That's it.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Myers.
Mine is just more information request. Might go along with what Commissioner Taylor said, but just on if you're giving me all these options of what the different levels will be, if I could just have a real simplified explanation of all the different pots of money, although they might be that pretty limited, and the difference between what the stormwater does and then the live replacement, the live stream replacement, how that works together, so I can clearly differentiate. Because we have this is what you were kind of talking about the other night. I mean, we have emergency situations we have to deal with, or ones that are almost emergencies. And so I just need like a little half-page primer on that. And maybe it's in here, but I didn't get it.
We can do that.
Or help me find it.
All right, anything else on stormwater? All right, obviously, a lot of work ahead, and some of that certainly going to be around financing, given the kind of volume of work that we know we need done as a community. Items 16 through 19 and 23 are by title only now, so you'll be getting some more material later. I'm ready to call forward Planning Director Brad Griffin, who's going to give presentations on 3 items now.
Can we go, are we taking a break?
And we're going to let's take a 5-minute break and meet you back. Screen will be down. monthly agenda setting meeting here in August 2023. And we have three planning and zoning items, and we're fortunate to have Planning Director Brad Griffin with us, who's going to present each of these in order. There'll be an opportunity for public input and then commission discussion. First item is number 20 regarding 160 and 170 Whitetail Way. Take it away, Brad.
Thank you, Mayor. As Mayor said, 3 items tonight. 2 of these are straight rezoning requests, which we don't see a lot, but we do see them often. The first one is 160 and 170 Whitetail Way. It's a request to rezone from employment office to employment industrial, which is still compatible with the employment center future land use on 22 3/4 acres. Really, the biggest and only thing that it changes going from EO to EI is it allows a light manufacturing use to also take place on the property, which is similar to what you would see out in the Athena Industrial Park in terms of use type. They get into phases here in building sizes, but as I've mentioned, this is certainly what they want to do, but this is a straight rezoning, therefore you have no binding plans or elevations if approved. This is a property, it's at the end of Trade Street where Whitetail Way runs into it. This is where the old Quality Deer Management property used to be before it was sold. And this is the portion of that overall tract that they're looking at rezoning to employment industrial. Here you see the change, existing and proposed zoning, compatible with future land use, concept of what they would like to build on the property if approved, and a recommendation from the Planning Commission was approval with one condition. It is compatible with future land use, but they did ask for consideration of a 50-foot future right-of-way strip across the very front of the property that would essentially connect Whitetail Way across and hit, let me see, get back to that, where you see Whitetail turn hard to the right there and turns into Trade Street. It would continue on down and hit the property on the bottom. That is the eastern property line of the Winslow Park PD, which has a connection point also designed into that original PD for future interconnection purposes. And with that, the Planning Commission recommendation was to approve with a unanimous vote.
All right, this is in District 6. Commissioner Houle.
Indeed. I'll avoid getting into too much detail unless colleagues have questions. I did have the benefit of the owner of the company and a number of the people who work on site taking me out to the facility and everything. I think this makes a lot of sense. I plan to support it. Happy to support the condition as well. Big fan of connectivity. The only thing I'd like to elaborate on kind of beyond this specific proposal is, we're running out of good space for EI zoning to really make sense. And there was a good chunk of land on the west side that was conceived for that sort of thing back in the day. Most of it's along Jennings Mill Parkway, which we've talked about a lot for other proposals, and is unlikely to become EI at all now. This is a section that's not, it's zoned, I think, EO in the whole road, is that right now? So just when we're thinking about future land use map, I actually feel like this maybe sets a domino motion for us to look at this area as a good spot for EI. I think it makes a lot of sense to have it here, and getting it in now before adjacent things are built is probably better than trying to stuff it in later. So anyway, I'm happy to see this happen. I think what they're trying to do at this particular location with this business is also going to be minimally invasive if and when residential stuff does exist nearby. And I hope that you all will support it. Thanks.
Any other input from the body? All right, we're going to move on to item 21.
Okay, item 21 is 2365 Prince Avenue. This is a request for a straight rezoning, again from commercial office to commercial neighborhood. This is at the corner of Prince Avenue and Hawthorne. The proposal from the applicant is to convert the existing, which I still refer to as Athens First Bank, to a restaurant use. There will be some additional parking added and additional sidewalk to connect to the public right-of-way. Right now, commercial or restaurants are not permitted in commercial office, but they are in commercial neighborhood. This commercial neighborhood is compatible with future land use of the area. You see there, future land use is all general business, which certainly allows for the CN zone to go there. CN also continues with restrictions on certain uses, the restaurant being one of those. They can't be too large in scale or scope. And then you can see here the change from the CO to the CN is really compatible with that node of Hawthorne Avenue as you move away from Prince Avenue southwest. view of the bank from the rear. And it is currently vacant, and the proposal is for a sit-down restaurant within the facility. There has been mention of a drive-through use. That would be a Phase 2 use that would come probably in conjunction with what you see there as the 4 pull-through lanes of what used to be the drive-through service for the bank. Most of that area, based on the applicant's proposal, would be enclosed for the kitchen. And they may offer something on the escape lane off to the right, but that would all be Phase 2 at a later point. You can see that here. Again, conceptual plan, approval of CN zoning does not require this to become a restaurant, but that's certainly the intent at this point of the individual who is asking for the rezoning. And the recommendation from Planning Commission was to approve. This is compatible with our comprehensive plan. It's a good redevelopment site versus a greenfield expansion, and it was a unanimous vote.
Thanks, Brad. Commissioner Fisher, this in District 5.
I'll be meeting with the Carter Engineering folks on the 22nd of August, so they're going to go and visit the site. I think it's great to have a restaurant, especially a sit-down restaurant in that particular area, which is not one. So I think that's a good concept. So I'm anxious to see that property get developed.
Great. Other input?
Makes me hungry.
All right. Last but not least, item 22, Brad.
Thank you, Mayor. This is 1040 US Highway 29 North. It's a special use permit request for a cell tower. It's a 170-foot monopole that would hold up to 4 antenna systems on it with a lease area. This is, if you're familiar with 29 North, let me show you. It's actually being sited at the backside of the self-service storage, what used to be, it may still be called Crazy Ray's, but that's the way I've always known it. And it's going off to the backside of that. This is actually a replacement tower for one that had to be removed when you all approved the tax credit project for the affordable housing and commercial out in front along Highway 72, immediately behind the Kroger out there. There was a tower on that site. That tower had to come down in order for that project to move forward, which it is in for review right now. And so they're simply looking for another location in this area to relocate it. It's probably less than a half a mile as the crow flies from one site to the next. Zone CG, so it's special use. You can see the square behind that last building is the compound that would be fenced in. And then they're required by our ordinance to do some simulations. You see it sits well back behind things off the road. The recommendation from the Planning Commission is to approve. The applicant went through all the requirements. They did the environmental assessments. A third-party engineering assessment was done to determine that there was no other towers in the immediate area that were suitable for a co-location. And that all checked out, and so Planning Commission recommendation is to approve.
Thanks, Brad. It's in Commissioner Thornton's district. She had to move on. Any other input on this?
No? Good job, Brad.
Thank you.
You owe me $10. No, I'm sorry.
All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn this agenda setting meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
I've got a motion from Commissioner Link, second from Commissioner Taylor. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, please sign your documentation for Gene, everybody, and have a great evening.